Big Bass Dreams Canada. Hope you guys are enjoying the Toronto Fishing and Boating Show. I'm Oliver Nye with Big Bass Dreams. Hope you guys are excited for 2021. Oh yeah. We've got Canadian specific content and merchandise coming at you guys. Aim high, dream big. That's a good fish.
Wow. You know what? We might be blessed and actually see him catch a fish like that in just a few minutes, because he's actually right now in Florida on his boat. He's doing this. He's going to be doing this live right off his boat. And we got Nick Kouzbis sitting in. No, he's in Florida right now. He's from California, but he's in Florida right now. Victoria's trying to correct me. You know, it's okay. I love her. But so he's, and the reason why he's in Florida, so let me tell you about Oliver Nye for a second. He's actually, you know, if you followed him over all the years, his whole thing has been about big fish and big fish always, and everything and it hasn't just been strictly bass. It's been on all different types of species, and that was Oliver's forte. Like, you know, it's always about big fish, big fish. And, you know, a lot of shows don't get to see the big fish. You know, they're learning shows and everything else. But with Oliver, it's always been big fish, and you really did always see big fish. So he's definitely going to test himself this year, because he's registered for all the opens, which is going to be really cool to see if he's going to become a big fish guy there. And then we got our own Nick Kouzbis. I can't begin to tell you, like, I've had the opportunity to know Nick for numerous years, and to qualify the type of angler this guy is personally, because we've seen his performance to the Canadian Open on Kingston, where we've ran on Kingston. We've seen it on Simcoe. I've seen it on Simcoe before the Canadian Open. And then in 1 year, we took a whole series of Pro-Ams, and we stretched them right across from Kingston all the way to the Niagara River. He fished all of them and finished top 3 in every single event. So he's definitely qualified as an angler goes, and he loves the big lakes. But I can tell you right now, we watched him do very well with a motor he had some issues with, and not being able to go very far, and finish top 10 on Rice Lake. So just to give you a little insight of how good of an angler Nick is and what he's done. So we're just going to go to a real quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back, and I'm going to be coming back with Nick Kouzbis and Oliver Nye, and we're going to be talking bass, and we're going to talk big bass on this Family Day Monday, which is our Pro Bass Academy Day. So we'll be right back.
There are people who know that there's more to getting there than just getting there, who know that going fast isn't fast enough, and who know living isn't the same as feeling alive. There are people who aren't afraid to stand out, make noise, make waves, and never look back. This one's for them. The Mercury 115 horsepower and 150 horsepower Pro XS outboards. Built to win tournaments. Designed to win your heart. Mercury, go boldly.
And we're back. Hey guys, did you hear what I said about you, Nick?
Yeah, I did. I heard everything.
Really? Oh man, I was thinking, you know what? I know his head's gonna swell. Hey Oliver, I hope I'm not putting you in a spot, because, you know, like leading up to last year in the Spring Fish Show, because you came down, and then, you know, and then I started following you, right? I started seeing like what you're about, right? And I'm very impressed, dude. Like, you know what? Very, very impressed, because like you got an incredible like track record of big fish, and so it's like, you know, you kind of remind me of Bob Izumi, and I'll tell you why I say that is because Bob Izumi is probably he's our grand poobah of fishing in Canada, our shows and everything. And the thing is, you know, when you have that kind of credentials, and you got that, and then all of a sudden you go into a tournament scenario, and Bob, he fishes hard competitively, he does very well, and it's almost like gives him credibility for what he does. But at the same time, you know, tournaments have humbled a lot of people, and people that have, you know, walked around with that tag. But and that's why for you now, you're fishing the opens. When's your first open event, or you actually had one already?
Yeah, the first event's on the Harris Chain here in Florida on March 4th.
And how are you feeling about that?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. You know, we're gonna be following you, eh? You know that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing, right? There's so many people that are just kind of discovering me and what I'm doing, and even the guys that have been following me since we started Big Bass Dreams back in 2012 have only kind of known me as that guy that you described.
But prior to that, I grew up tournament bass fishing throughout my youth, throughout my teens, throughout my early 20s. So the competitive side of this game is nothing new to me. I just got to step away from it for a while and got to just chase my own dreams. And thankfully was able to find a little bit of a niche that people seem to like big fish. And I do too. But it's just one of those things that I have yet to do at this level. And as a kid and someone of my generation, I'm not going to age myself too bad, but when I was a kid growing up watching all these guys doing it from California, I mean, I couldn't be further removed from that being a reality of me becoming a professional fisherman. And you either were a guide or you're on the Bassmasters.
Yeah.
Right. So that was always a thing for a younger version of myself. But it's taken me 28 years to leverage myself in a position to, number one, have the experience, to have confidence that I can not get my ass completely kicked fishing against 200 amazing anglers. And number two, having the resources to actually do it.
Yeah, it's true. No, you know what? It does cost a lot to be able to be out there. More so for you, because what people don't realize, your home base is California, and a lot of these tournaments aren't what's the closest tournament to you this year?
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. So and in driving hours, what are we talking? How far of a distance is that?
Straight shot, it's got to be at least 25.
So 25 hours. That's their closest lake that you're going to be fishing this year.
Yep.
Wow. So you have a bed that pulls under that boat, so that way you can kind of go to sleep there.
That Toyota Tundra does beautifully. Nick's the same. I towed my rig all the way to Toronto 3 or 4 times now.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna hopefully see at one of our tournaments this year. Now, Nick, so you know what, buddy?
I'm about to get run over by an airboat.
Don't get run over. No. That would be terrible.
Can you imagine?
That would be, oh my God. Nick, you know what, dude? I think we're pretty blessed in the sense of, you get a chance to, what's your biggest travel? 4 hours, 6 hours, maybe? St. Clair is actually a bit of a haul for you. But we've watched you. I've known you personally. I used to compete against you back in the Bass Ontario days and in the GM days, and that's a long time. And you somehow managed to still look young. I don't know how. You got all your hair. I actually had the question before. I said, he's wearing that hat. I'm wondering if the COVID's taken away all his hair, but obviously it hasn't. So that's pretty good. It's all there, dude. It's all there. I can't believe it.
All there, yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of hair. So,
yeah, that's why I'm putting a hat on there. It's a COVID hairdo.
That's a COVID hairdo. So, you know what? But your career has been amazing, dude. You've had some incredible sponsors that have supported you, and obviously they're not putting their names to people that aren't, creditable to their products. And so, based on that, watching, your performance, how close the Canadian Open Kingston that we have to get back there just for you, because it's the one I thought was yours for sure. And then now we're on Simcoe, and we've done Rice, we've done Quinty, we've done the Pro-Ams there where you love the Pro-Ams, and that's, to me, is awesome that you're not afraid to show spots. You're not afraid. You just do what you got to do, right? So, but then even last year we went one step further and went to Lake St. Francis, and even there, that's an amazing fishery. You really did well there too. So I don't know what to say. You're really a very, good. But would you say mainly smallmouth for you? Is that your number one fish? What would you think?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people just think I'm a smallmouth fisherman. I mean, we grew up fishing largemouth back in the days. Yeah. That's how you had, win tournaments. It was always largemouth. Yeah. But the transition, over time between the gobies and the and just the fact that we're moving to bigger water now just changed all that. I remember the first time fishing Simcoe, I got my butt handed to me fishing largemouth. I just thought that's what I knew. So I fished it. And then, after getting my butt kicked, I'm like, I better learn these smallmouth. And the smallmouth really has become the predominant species in so many of our tournaments. You have to be a good smallmouth angler. And there are some similarities, but for the most part, they're quite different. And, what they do, how they move around the lake, the cover and the structures that they use are vastly different. So Oliver's at the catches. You got bit. You got bit. Yeah.
don't get an alligator, whatever you do, or be careful no snakes crawl up into your boat, because that would really freak me out. So,
yeah. So anyways, smallmouth is the deal, and if you want to win tournaments out here, you gotta be a good smallmouth fisherman. You gotta understand them, and most of my time now is spent. To me, is like fishing largemouth. I love it. I can't, when I get the day off or the time off, I just want to go largemouth fishing because I fish smallies so much. I really miss, cover fishing, all that docks and trees and heavy weeds. And, you look at the Johnsons, even they're, when they transitioned into these big tournaments, you could see the similarities down in Florida, how similar it is to how we fish largemouth up here. It's a lot of vegetation and heavy cover. So it's an easy transition. It's obviously different in a lot of ways, but smallmouth is a deal up here, but I don't mind, flipping some heavy cover for largemouth too.
Now, Oliver, is smallmouth not a big deal in California, like in those lakes, but down your way, or not necessarily? Oh, I can't hear you. I think your mic's off.
There you go. My mic off so I can save everybody's ears from that airboat that almost ran me over.
Yeah, that's okay. That's kind of like it would have been a blonde beep. But for coming from California and that region, right? I always thought smallmouth was huge in that California area too. Is that correct, or you kind of get a mix of both?
You got to keep in mind how big California is, right? I'm from Southern California, LA. From San Diego to the Oregon border, you're probably looking at 15, 18-hour drive time. So it's a good state. The closest bodies of water to me that have smallmouth in them are probably about 2.5 to 3 hours away.
Oh, wow. So you're predominantly a largemouth guy?
Yeah, it's all largemouth. So,
this is good. So we got a bit of a balance.
And northern strain largemouth. A lot of our lakes have only northern strain largemouth, so they top out at 9, 10, 11.
What's that mean? What's that mean? Well, there's different sizes or different habitat, or
there's 2 subspecies of largemouth bass.
Okay.
So Florida strain largemouth are the ones that you guys see getting over 11, 12, 13 pounds. If it's bigger than that, it's going to have Florida genetics in it, whether it's 100% pure Florida strain or a hybrid of some kind. You guys have only northern strain largemouth.
Yeah.
So those guys really top out at like 12, 13 pounds on the very high end, and everything's got to be right for that to happen. So
we got huge smallmouth strain, right, Nick?
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, this is the mecca of smallmouth. I mean, there are, Tennessee's, starting to produce some big smallies out there, and California had a run out there where they had some really big ones. But yeah, I mean, the Great Lakes just has everything that they need to get big. The fact that the gobies have been introduced, they're gluttons now. They just sit down and lay on their bellies and just eat gobies. Gobies don't have an air bladder, so they can only go up so high before they come back down. So they're pretty easy targets.
Bill's saying he's snagging into snowbanks up here. He must be fishing off his dock.
Oh man.
Hey, so I'm gonna try to get this thing going here. I got some questions. I'm gonna stay on for a bit, and then I'll kind of head out and leave you guys to be if you guys want. So kind of want to make a bit of a comparison, like a cold front to let's say Florida, because you're in Florida right now. So if you end up with a cold front situation, which I know they had 2 weeks ago, was huge. And how are you going to approach that down there, Oliver, like a cold front?
All right. Mind you, another airboat's going by right now, so bear with me.
Wow, huge.
See what he's got to deal with?
Actually, not even on the lake for the signs, but they must be with the Fish and Wildlife or something. But when I was here 2 weeks ago, this very body of water dropped all the way down to 52 degrees. And right now it's sitting at 72 degrees. So it's a 20-degree swing in less than 2 weeks. Prior to that, the first wave of big fish had moved up, and I knew guys that were catching them bed fishing in January. And that cold front came through and pushed everything out. Water temp plummeted. And these Florida strain bass, just like our Florida strain bass that were transplanted from here to Southern California, just do not respond well to cold fronts. they get super finicky. So that's where my advantage as a Californian, having to fish super tough, lockjaw, pressured, neutral largemouth comes into effect. Slow it down, pick things apart. There's a boil back there. And really just start to take my time and not. Yeah, sorry, I had to throw on. Lucky on a pretty good buzzbait bite right before I jumped on. The cloud cover finally came through. Apparently, I didn't realize it, but I was pre-fishing because I left the hook keeper on the brand new Jamaican boa buzzbait, and I had about a 5.5 pounder. Literally smoke it at my rod tip, hooked it, and probably the coolest bite I've had in the last week. And it came off, and I couldn't figure out why. 4 bites later, I go to put a trailer hook on, and I noticed that little clear piece of silicone on my point.
Oh my God!
So there's a pro tip for you guys: take the hook keepers off.
Yeah.
That's a guy that needs these things, man. Type of mistake. So I don't know what to say.
I've gone 28 years of my life and never did that up until today.
That is actually very funny. Nick, tell us how you approach a cold front and maybe a little bit about Canadian cold fronts for fishing.
Yeah, Andy, you know what? Cold fronts up here, they're not anywhere near as severe as they are down south. Again, Oliver's 100% right. Those water temperatures can fluctuate so much, and those fish literally they hate, like, cold fronts are killers. I was down there years ago, and on one day before a front came in, we caught like 100 bass in a day. There was 3 of us in a boat. We caught over 100. Cold front came in overnight. The next day, between the 3 of us, we caught 8. And I mean, it's that tough. They are lockjaw. But up here, you don't get that. It's all about really mindset and just shifting what you want to do. You know, maybe the day before you're whipping spinner baits or, you know, jerk baits real fast. And then a cold front comes through and just their mood changes a little bit. You know, water temp, we rarely look at water temp in the summertime. The fluctuation of water temp doesn't change a whole lot. It's more in the spring, which we can't fish in Canada unless we're on Lake Erie. Now Lake Ontario's open up. So for sure, cold fronts will make a difference. You get a couple of days of warming trend in a pre-spawn. That'll move fish up shallow. They'll go crazy. A cold front comes in and they just back off. They'll back off into deep water, hang around there. And then when that warming trend starts up again, they'll move up. But cold fronts in the summertime, it's just it's a little change in your bait rather than throwing something fast. They'll still be in that same area, but you might have to slow down a bit, maybe go to a jig or a tube or a drop shot, something, a little bit more subtle, slower. Remember that strike window on a bass is much smaller during cold fronts. And a cold front really up here might last a day, and then they're back at it again. They get more active. They don't really, it's not a big thing. I think it affects us more than it does the fish.
I'm just going to keep them on. I keep putting them on and off. So I'm reading all these questions. Guys, keep throwing your questions in. We're just going to load you guys up. No, that's what I'm saying. Keep loading into questions. And what we're going to do is I just want to build on these guys, get some information. And you guys just, if you come up with questions, load them up and we'll get to them in a bit. So the cold fronts is one thing in Ontario. And I don't know that we have such a big problem with water fluctuations as so rampant as in the States and the reservoirs, because I don't know, Oliver, if you've experienced it, but like from what I understand, some of these reservoirs can fluctuate up to 10 or 12 feet in a matter of weeks. And how does that affect the fishing?
It's really similar to even shallow bodies of water, right? Anytime you got rising water, fish tend to move shallow. They want to go explore this new territory, this new environment. And anytime it's dropping, whether it's a few inches on a shallow Florida lake or tens of feet on a steep canyon lake, they're going to respond the same way. They generally will suck up off of that shallow cover, and I'll start targeting them in that main body of water.
So what you're saying is the fish will just continually stay shallow or in that comfortable depth zone that they're in, and relate to obstacles or cover within the moving out to shore, towards shore and maintaining that shore distance. Is that what you're saying, basically?
As a general rule, if you got rising water, I'm confident fishing shallow. And shallow and deep are relative terms. Right, I'm fishing this brand new water in Florida here. and deep is 4 to 6 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, everything else is 2 to 4. So
Right.
I'm focusing my efforts in deep water versus back at home in Southern California or the Midwest where you got deep rock canyon lakes. Deep is 15 to 30.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so and with that being said, going back to the cold front situations, right? And Nick, you know, like obviously being where we are, we get major cold fronts blowing in pretty quickly. With those cold fronts coming in, do you feel more comfortable? Okay, just keep this to Nick for a second. Do you feel more comfortable fishing the shallow, fishing a shallow bite in cold fronts, or how do you adjust? Do you actually move out to deeper water?
You know, Andy, if we're talking smallmouth, you know, cold fronts, you know, those fish, if they're shallow, they'll back off. They'll back off to that, you know, the edge, the ledge or whatever, or I can still catch them shallow, but if I'm catching them shallow, the best shallow water will be closest to the deepest water. So if you have a shallow flat way back in a bay, no, the chance of you finding fish after a cold front is next to none. I'm looking for like a shallow shelf or a ledge that's right near deep water, easy access for those fish to go up and then come back down. Those are things that I key on. You know, in the fall time when you get into, like in a lot of our lakes, you get into that perch bite and stuff like that, they'll move up on shallow flats. I mean, really shallow, even in September and October. But when those cold fronts come in and that water starts to drop, they back off. You'll still catch them in shallow water, but it's got to be near. They want access to deep water. And if that access isn't there, there's no point looking.
Oliver, what's your?
He nailed it. Nick,
yeah, I think so. I think he nailed it too. So the one thing though, Nick, is like, you know, when we're talking about smallmouth fishing and getting into fall patterns, like, you know, the top water really gets pretty aggressive. Like I love fishing smallmouth top water in the fall, especially like on smaller lakes like Cooch and stuff like that. And I don't know, is it the same thing down by you there, Oliver? Like, are you getting a good top water bite closer to the end of the seasons, or?
Yeah. Anytime you got a lot of bait fish activity, and anytime you got that activity shallow, those fish tend to be willing to come to the surface and eat. I mean, I've been catching frogfish and buzzbait fish here in February for the first time in my life because I've never been in Florida bass fishing. And if I can get them to eat a topwater bait, you better believe I'm going to try. And I was rigging up a mega dog because they eat big shiners down here. And my buddy was catching them on a walking bait the other day, and I'm like, I guess it's time. Let's go. So
wow, that's pretty awesome. So Nick, explain to us why like ripping spinner baits in the end of September, early October is such an effective way of catching smallmouth when, you know, the water temperatures are slowly dropping, and I know that a lot of fish are trying to conserve their summer fat, and but yet smallmouth seem to really get turned on by ripping spinner baits as hard as you can the end of September, early October.
I've seen the men do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know what? Spinnerbait's probably one of the most overlooked baits. I mean, it was very popular back in the days. It slowly lost its popularity just because newer baits have come out. A lot of the younger anglers have picked up on that newer stuff, and the old stuff gets left behind. But I mean, the thing about fall time or when fish move shallow, it's always about forage. They're only up there because they're eating something. If there's nothing to eat up there, there's no reason for them to be up there. So they get on those perch bites or whatever it is, depending on the lake. And that burning spinnerbait in clear water is all about a reaction bite. In super clear water, if I'm fishing spinnerbait slow, it doesn't mean you're not going to get bit, but that faster motion of getting that bait, they react to it. And smallmouth, they're super aggressive. They're almost like a pack of wolves that'll move up on a flat and they'll just spread out and start eating. They corner bait fish, they get them up high, they corner them into a back of a bay or around weed lines, and they just attack. So that faster motion, that burning that spinnerbait, doesn't give them a whole lot of chance to think about it. They just react to it and hit it. Colors and stuff like that, a lot of that is confidence, man. White chartreuse, just something bright that they will react to quickly. I just find they'll eat it better. There are certain situations where a darker spinnerbait will work, but generally, if I'm on a spinnerbait bite, I'm throwing white or chartreuse. I don't play around too much with colors. You can go around, on cloudy days, maybe a painted blade might work better, and on sunny days, a silver or gold, something that flashes off the sun will create more flash, and you'll get bit more. I'll play around with that, but yeah, spinner baits, even a chatterbait. A lot of guys don't throw a lot of chatterbaits for smallmouth, but in that time of year, that vibration and flash can really trigger some big fish to bite. I remember tournaments when I was young, some of the biggest fish were always caught on a spinnerbait. Somebody'd say, I was chucking a spinnerbait by a chunk of wood and end up catching like a 7.5 pound largemouth or something like that, right? So it's a big fish bait. There's no doubt about it.
So, Oliver, with respect to spinnerbaits, obviously spinnerbaits always been a big thing, and we watched Kevin Van Dam over the years, especially when it comes to Florida and other areas. But when you're tying onto spinnerbait, are you tying directly to the bait? Are you using a like you got to remember, we're dealing here. We're talking to people that some of the people that are most novice anglers coming into the sport. They're watching here today, or they will be watching next couple of days. Are you tying directly to the spinnerbait? Are you using a leader form? Are you using mono? What do you recommend when fishing with a spinnerbait?
If I feel those fish are kind of dumb, I'm going to straight tie to braid. And the more pressure they are, the more likely I'll put on like a 15 to 20, even 25 pound short fluorocarbon leader. But you also got to keep in mind, those fish are eating that skirted bait and right off of a stainless steel blade, wire form.
Yeah.
So typically, if you're presenting that bait well enough, a la Nick Kouzis, it doesn't really matter. They're going to come up and react to it. They're not looking at your line. So where I like to throw a spinnerbait is typically in and around cover, and I'm hoping I run into one of those bigger fish. So the last thing I want is to be undergunned when I hook a good fish in and around cover. I've been watching some of my friends fish standard gear here in Florida, and they'll hook one over 5 pounds and then just get buried right in the grass. And then it gets off, or the fish gets wedged, and it eventually works its way off. I work too damn hard to get my bites. I want to land every single one of them. So with like a spinnerbait, I'm going to straight tie, especially in dirtier water, low visibility, anything less than like 4 feet of viz. For sure, I'm straight tying a braid. And if I do feel like they are getting heavily pressured and I got a fish behind Nick, I've got to put a fluorocarbon leader on there just to help my own confidence more than anything.
But you did say something there that's intriguing, because like there's a lot of wire there in the past. Remember, we had the Salton spinnerbaits that actually had that black wire. So like the thing is like, to have just even just a ball swivel type of deal to be able to determine what colors work, would you be opposed to something like that? Only I'm just thinking for the average guy, it'd be easier for him to change over colors as opposed to tying knots on directly to the line.
Your problem with most spinnerbaits it depends what that wire form is. If it's twisted, you've got a closed eye that you can use something like a snap-on. But if it's not, if it's an R-bend, you don't have that option.
Yeah,
so it's going to slide up and down. It's not going to, can't do it.
Right. And you're obviously tying directly to a crankbait. I would think that's the obvious.
Actually, I don't know how Nick operates, but like I fish pretty much braid to fluoro leader on just about every presentation, outside of some of the really big baits in certain scenarios. And I prefer a heavy fluorocarbon leader, not because I'm necessarily afraid they won't bite the braided line, but more so to increase my fishability. Braided line is so limp that it tends to foul hook the baits, especially mid-cast.
Yeah.
Cast, and of course, it's always the perfect cast where, like, if you actually landed without that bait fouling, you probably would have got a bite. So to minimize that from happening, I fish a really short, heavy fluorocarbon leader. It's super stiff, so it lends itself to not be able to wrap around your hooks. So you're making more fixable casts throughout the course of a day. Holy crap, that is a giant loss.
That's a really good tip. That's a really good tip. Like so you're just talking like about a 6 to 12 inch, if even 12 inches as far as.
Yeah, like 12 inches is good. I don't like winding my knots through guides, so it's going to be probably 8 to 12 inches a leader.
Now, Nick, you do the same thing too?
You know what, Oliver, that's something I learned from Oliver, because I was really in a lot of ways when it came to crankbaits and stuff like that, I was more a fluorocarbon guy. But there are, because braid's got no stretch. The beauty of it, and we fish in lakes that have so many weeds, it's easier to snap the bait off. It's easier to get the action that you want. I mean, especially for a guy that's starting up, you know, to get feel with fluorocarbon or mono, man, would be very hard. Like, it put everything on your side when you're learning, because feel is it's something learned. It's not like learning to walk when you're a kid. It's not instinctive. It really takes time. I spent a lot of time with new guys on the water, teaching them how to fish. And I realize how difficult it is. You lose sight of it. We've been doing it for so long. I mean, Oliver's been fishing since he was a kid. I've been fishing. I don't want to tell you how old I am, but I've been fishing for a long time. So my feel's gotten better every time we're on the water, every time we're learning something new. So for a newbie, a guy that's just starting, feel takes time. So put everything on your side. Use braid. You know, if you're going out if you want to learn something specific, don't be afraid to put a little more money into a rod that's got a little more sensitivity. All that stuff's going to make you feel better. It's going to make you a better angler in the long run.
So go ahead, sorry, Oliver.
So let me add into that, right? For the guys that are just coming into fishing, first of all, welcome. You guys are in for a lot of amazing experiences and some deep, dark holes that you're going to fall down into. But it's all part of the game. You guys have the benefit of not knowing any better, okay? As an angler coming up, before fluorocarbon was available, before most braided lines were available, I fished monofilament.
Yeah.
So I built mechanics, muscle memory, and my style of fishing around super stretchy monofilament line. So I had to make an adjustment when I went to fishing straight fluorocarbon for years. And I went back and forth with the braided line options and just couldn't wrap my head around the different feel that Nick is describing. It was almost hyper sensitive.
Yeah.
And it was hurting me because I was just used to fishing with a stretchy sponge of a line. And it took me a long time to make the adjustments on my end and stop yanking so hard, stop setting the hook so quickly on fish. I had to accommodate the different characteristics of the braided line to realize its benefits. So I'm speaking to the guys that are experienced and come from a mono or straight fluoro background, because that used to be me. But I'm gonna tell you right now, you're gonna spend a lot less money online, because I took some of this braid for like 1 to 3 seasons.
Wow.
I'm only tying on super short fluorocarbon leaders, and dude, I'll fish some of these leaders for like 2 weeks, and I'm fishing a lot. Holy crap, man! There's all kinds of things here in Florida. There's things I hear a lot of guys cringe when I tell them I'm fishing a hard bait on braid to fluoro. They're like, "What?" And it's like, "Oh man, don't you lose fish and don't you miss bites?" And that's probably attributed to mechanics built from fishing mono and fluoro. If you actually watch the videos that we have on the Big Bass Dreams channel, on my personal YouTube channel, you can actually see my mechanics. And this is where I've benefited over the years more than anything. I probably watch myself fish and make more mistakes than anybody who's ever held a fishing rod in their life. Like I'm pretty confident I've been able to sit there and dissect my wins, and most importantly, every time I've screwed the pooch. And I've gotten better at making mechanical adjustments and just screwing up less. And over the course of time, things start working in my favor. Except for today, I should have took that stupid hook keeper off my buzzbait. So I'd have a pretty nice one in the box.
Oh man, Nick, do you have a direction you like to go with this, or want me to step out, or you want me to kind of keep going with this?
Oh, whatever. It's up to you, man. We're good. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are good. Okay, you know what? I'm going to step out for a bit. I got a couple things I'm just going to wrap up this afternoon. I got Jason Bernootz coming on for Fish Care. I'm going to come back on after the commercial break, maybe help you guys with the questions because they're starting to come in. But maybe I think you guys could feed off each other for a bit. I think it's pretty cool. And like, I know you're both capable. One couple of things, obviously, I don't need to tell you the touch base on is new anglers. And I think Oliver's already done a pretty good job welcoming the new anglers and appreciating they're not going to spend, $500-600 on a rod and reel combo. So it's just stuff we need to know. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, 2 very competent anglers, and I can assure you're going to learn a lot from is good friend of mine, Nick Kouzbis, and Oliver and I. Take it away, guys, and thank you for coming up. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Oliver, let's talk about your year, man. What's going on? What do you got going on?
Got a couple things, my friend, and we actually haven't had a chance to actually catch up too much.
No.
It's a big year for me. You know, you and I have talked about me dabbling in the high-end tournament stuff the last few years, but more just like always, man, it comes down to timing and having the resources and me having that experience to be confident enough to take a good crack at winning some of these events. And I'm going to go in with the intention of trying to win every single one of them. Obviously, I know what the reality of that is, but I also come out here on the water with the intention of catching a really big bass. And I know what the reality of that is. But because of the mindset, I put myself in positions to do well. And I look forward to hopefully doing the same on the Bassmaster Opens Tour, man. And honestly, it's going to be a nice refresh for me to put my head back into competitive fishing. And pivot my focus and my hyper focus from targeting giant fish only to, you know, multiple days and a bigger average of fish than the competitors is going to be challenging. It's going to be hopefully really rewarding to me and allow me to kind of go back to my roots, right? Because when I was growing up fishing, man, I used to have imaginary tournaments against myself in my head. Right? Like, oh man, my biggest five today were 12 pounds, or my biggest five today were 15. Like, holy crap, man, I almost had 20 pounds today, and this, that, and the third. So it's going to be a pretty awesome experience. And, you know, I speak to the guys that come into fishing now. Like, that wasn't something that I was ever ready to jump into until this point in my life.
Yeah.
And I've always felt like I've been a pretty decent angler, even early on. But I was never ready like I am now. So don't feel rushed to jump into the competitive side of this beautiful sport and passion. Just go out there, have fun, try to catch as many different kinds of fish, as many different ways as you can, and in many different places as you can. Because at the end of the day, fishing has become the greatest excuse for me to do things that I never thought I would do as a young broke kid growing up outside of LA, like hanging out with you and the entire Megabass and Big Bass Dreams crew in Canada. The last 4 or 5 times has been a blast. I'm here in Florida for the first time because of fishing. So let it be the beautiful thing that it is, and allow it to connect you to awesome people. I never thought I'd ever go fishing in Canada, let alone have friends there. You got all right, man.
Yeah, touch a little bit about, because this is important. Touch a little bit about you talked about resources. Explain what you mean what you mean about that, and how that can affect tournament fishing or putting yourself out there. It's so much that you got going on in 1 year. What are resources, Steve?
Man, you got to have the ability to, number one, travel.
Yeah.
You got to be able to pay for travel costs, food, tournament entries. I mean, my tournament entries for those 9 opens is $16,200 USD.
Yeah.
I've never spent that much money on tournament entries. Like, I used to have to really hustle to put my half of my $300 entry for a weekend tournament. Into the pot. I've just worked my ass off, man, to be in a position to take a real crack at it. And thankfully, I've got to fish a lot of different places and built strong relationships with brand partners that see value in what I'm trying to do and what we're trying to do as a team at Big Bass Dreams, and influence this fishing culture in the best of ways. And hopefully, someone coming up, whether they're young, middle-aged, or old, that has just discovered fishing, can find some of our insight valuable.
Right.
And I think we've done a pretty good job of that as a team worldwide.
Yeah.
Especially the boys in Canada, man. You guys have, besides the Border Patrol, Canadian people as a whole seem so much nicer than most people that I've come across.
You remember that first trip that you came up here, the problems that we had at the border?
They're with me. Yeah.
That was horrible.
Like, it's about a 50-50 shot for me whether I'm getting pulled over, frisked, and taken, having my truck and boat ripped apart.
Oh, I know.
But it's worth it, man, because once I'm there, it's all positivity. It's all love. The fishing opportunities are incredible, from bass to panfish. Man, I know some of your boys are going to be catching those mega perch out of the ice, and in the early season, that gets me fired up. Big muskies abound, obviously, north of the border.
Yeah.
I fall in love with those fish, and the big smallies, like you talked about, like the picture floating around for this live stream that we're doing came right before I actually went to your house. Right there on Lake Ontario. That was my PB smallie. I think she was 7'1" and ate an Ito Shiner.
Giant.
At the time. And man, I'd never even seen a smallmouth over 4 pounds up until that fall. So you guys have some incredible opportunities as anglers, and just keep this in mind. I towed my bass boat from LA at least 4 times now.
Yeah.
To Toronto. The grass is not always greener on the other side, my friends. Your grass, although frozen in white right now, at the right time of year, is often greener than the rest of North America.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. You know what? If anybody's listening from the border, man, now we've had this conversation, please be nice to anglers when they're coming across. We're all good people. We just want to fish.
Show the Canadians some love, my peoples. Gosh, man.
Yeah, jeez.
Sometimes us Americans are a little bit more rude than I care for, and I like to apologize on behalf of the entire country.
Well, thank you for that. That's awesome.
Yeah, man. But yeah, tournament fishing is going to be a big deal.
Yeah,
it's crazy. I'm sitting in my new Dream Machine here, and the last boat I brought to your house, Nick, was a boat that I never pictured myself ever being able to afford or get into. But I worked my way literally from the shoreline to the piers to float tube to rental boats to fishing on buddies' boats, and buying my first piece of crap and outfitting it, and, building it kind of like that Dream Machine 1.0 you guys see me fishing out of all the time. There's just levels to it, and I'm honestly thankful that I didn't have the capability to jump into a boat and equipment like I do now, because I don't think I would have truly appreciated it like I do, because this thing is freaking sick. And I used to think a floating styrofoam block, if I could stand on it, was sick. So it always comes back to perspective, man. And I know people that are coming into fishing because of COVID, right? Like, it's not easy to come about the resources to even go out there and have a fun day on the water. So don't get it twisted. Just go out and enjoy fishing for what it truly is, and it's at its purest form. And that's not competitive fishing by any means, but at the end of the day, I feel like competitive fishing is the best showcase of high-end techniques and philosophies, equipment, because you guys are watching the best guys in the world trying to beat the snot out of each other, and they typically don't hold anything back. So I want to see a push to where the general audience sees more value in tournament fishing because of that context, versus the flood of unfiltered content available to everybody through our fingertips. There's no editors, there's no vetting process. Anybody with a cell phone camera and a YouTube account or an Instagram or a Twitter or a TikTok or whatever it is these days is able to put out content. And just because they have a large audience doesn't mean you should be paying attention to them. All right. So all you guys that are new to fishing and want to learn how to catch them, it matters where and who your information comes from. And context is everything, because I can watch a bass eat a piece of vegetable or fruit off of a hook.
Right.
But how is that going to help me become a better angler?
Correct.
It's not.
Yeah, no. Well said, man. Well said. Oliver, we got a question here. Mark Andrew, thank you very much. He's asking you a question. What's the biggest difference between fishing California waters and Florida waters? Thanks for that question.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. You're not going to believe this. The biggest difference is I've never caught a bass while doing a live stream in California. Sitting in my seat.
Oh man.
That's one difference. Hold on, let me try not to break my destroyer here.
Man, that may be a 1 pounder, 2 pounder, but here right now with what we got going on here, that might as well be a 10 pounder, man. That's a beauty.
Is it bigger now? Is it
Much bigger, much bigger.
Yeah, take a screen capture of that one, huh, boys and girls? You can't see my hand anymore. There's a secret for you guys. Number 2 would probably be the Gators.
Yeah.
They're real. Gosh, man, he had it. A little dot crawler action.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's cool.
Wow.
Sorry, a little distracted there.
Okay.
But the amount of vegetation, right? There's no rock. It's taken me a little bit to get comfortable running my brand new bass boat in 2 to 4 feet of water.
Yeah.
Not knowing what is out here, but apparently it's fine.
Oh man.
It just sets up different. But here's the thing. It also sets up the same in so many ways. It's got Florida strain largemouth, which I've been fishing for my entire life. This is where they're from.
Right.
So it's funny. Guys have these misconceptions in their heads and these boxes that we build around ourselves and what we think may or may not be possible based on what we know or the information that we've been subjected to. And one of the things that I've always heard is like, oh, those big swim baits, they won't work in Florida for X whatever reason, whether it's our fish don't eat trout, which is inconsequential, or there's too much grass, yada, yada, yada. My second day ever in a bass boat in Florida, my own boat, that is, I stuck a 25-inch largemouth on a Defiant 247, which is a 247 millimeter bait. It's not a small bait, and that fish snuffed it. I think I showed you the video of that one.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. Wow. Yeah.
So don't ever think that something people are doing somewhere else to catch fish won't work where you are.
Yeah.
I've made a career out of showing people that it works. Fish are fish. Big fish eat little fish. It doesn't matter if it's a trout. It doesn't matter if it's a shad. It doesn't matter if it's a perch, et cetera, et cetera. I've never seen a fire tiger anything in the water. Have you?
No. But they eat it.
They eat it. Blue chartreuse. That's one of my favorite colors.
Yeah.
So don't get stuck in mental blocks and let people tell you something can or cannot work. Go out there, learn for yourself. Experiment, and just have a mind of your own.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what makes you a better angler in the end, right? You learn.
That's it. Learning never stops, guys.
Yeah,
it really doesn't. And that's the beautiful thing about fishing. 28 years in, and I am still trying to figure out ways to be better and new ways to catch these fish in places I've never done it before. So. The opportunities to have fun are endless. Oh my gosh, you're chasing bait right behind me in this canal here. Like that.
Really? Wow. I'm so jealous.
What else we got here?
We got another question here. Yeah, Oliver from Michael. I don't have any glasses. Blumhagen, I believe. What big swim baits would you recommend for Ontario waters?
Well, if you guys actually go on the Big Bass Dreams YouTube channel and search Big Bass Dreams Canada, we've got an actual playlist of pretty much every time I've come up to fish with the Canadian team. And we've caught fish on the big bait up there. We've caught them on the ice slide. We've caught them on the Defiant. Caught them on the Mag Draft. Plenty of big swim bait eating fish in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
So all the ones you see that work here in the States, they work in Canada as well.
Yeah. It's amazing how a bass will eat something its same size, right?
Oh man, it's crazy. I routinely catch 2 and 3 pound fish on 8 to 11 inch baits.
Okay, question for me. Hi, Nick. Do you fish buzzbaits here in Ontario at all? When and what type of setup do you use? Yeah, buzzbaits are another one of those baits that kind of get overlooked here quite a bit. I mean, there might be some guys secretly throwing on them, but you rarely hear about them. But they're an awesome bait. I love throwing them when I'm looking for fish over top flats, shoreline cover, floating vegetation. They're really cool bait because they're very weedless. Even though that hook is open, the way it sits in the water, you can really run it over a lot more things than you think. And I love fishing it. I love target fishing with a buzzbait too. When I'm fishing the edge of weeds or lily pads where they meet maybe some reeds or cattails, over top a milfoil. My setup really, it's with a buzzbait. I love straight braid. I love, like, it depends. There's two different rod setups. If I'm really target fishing, so I'm fishing shoreline, trees, docks, I'll go a little bit shorter, maybe a 7-foot rod. I get better accuracy with a shorter rod. If I'm fishing over flats, I may go longer, 7.2, even up to 7 floor when my accuracy isn't as important. But straight braid, 40-pound, 50-pound braid. I don't ever remember a situation where I ever put a fluorocarbon leader on that. I'll just go straight braid. And, but I want a faster reel, something like a 7-1 and up, just to keep that bait above the water. And a lot of times I'll change speeds. Buzzbaits are really easy baits to fish with. Literally, it can be a chuck and wind. Literally, cast it out there and just reel it. The biggest key about a buzzbait is you almost want to get, it's like a hand-eye coordination with timing. So just before that bait hits the water, I'll engage that reel and start that retrieve. That way, because they don't float, they sink. So if you let it hit the water and then close your bail and try to reel it, a lot of times that bait is sunk, half a foot, and it's caught in weeds. If you almost simultaneously turn that reel the second it's about to hit the water, it keeps that bait on the surface and gets it running. Man, if you haven't tried it, try it. It's good for both largemouth and smallmouth. I've caught big fish. It's a big fish bait too. Really,
it is. Big fish eat it. It's a straight reaction bite. So they might. I don't think they're trying to eat it ever. I really think they just get pissed at it and just want to.
Yeah, and some guys say, like, oh, you can't reel them fast because you miss them. Listen, when a bass wants to eat something, if it's missing it all the time, that generally means that they're slashing at it. They don't want it. They, get away from my area. But when they want to eat it, I've burned a buzzbait as fast as I can on the surface, and they will clock it. Like, doesn't matter how fast they eat it. So when they don't want it, if you're getting a lot of slashes, try a different speed, or maybe go to something different. Maybe they don't want it. You got to slow down. There's fish in the area. I'll always go back with a worm or a jig or something, maybe a Senko or something, and slow things down. But when they want it, they're going to eat it no matter what speed you're running it at.
And hit things with it. Think bumper cars.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, sometimes, guys get a crankbait and a crankbait's like gets a little bit off center and it's running to the left or the right. We'll take that eye and bend it and it'll straighten it out. I actually don't mind a buzzbait that bends, that goes to the left or to the right. If it's going to the right, I'll hit targets so that it kind of run into a log, run into that pillar of a dock. That hit, that noise or whatever, it just triggers fish, and you'll get a lot of strikes after that.
And don't swing, just wind and turn.
Right. Yeah. Big. You know what? That's awesome, Oliver. You're 100% right. A lot of times people see the splash and they just react to it. No, almost wait a second and don't set the hook. Reel it down, and when you feel the tension, then pull back on that fish. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And take the hook cover off.
You were talking about that. The first spinnerbait I ever took out from a mega bass had that cover on it, and I was throwing it, and I got one. No, it's off. Cast again. Oh, I got one. Oh, it's off. Dude, I didn't know that cover was on until I actually hooked the fish, got it to the boat, and realized that plastic slip was on that hook. Too funny. But yeah, make sure that if you have a plastic cover on the hook, you take it off. Okay, what do we got here? What's one of the body of water fishing experience that's on your bucket list, guys? Oliver.
Oh, boy. In Canada?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to say a proper Simcoe mission, because I still haven't really done that in prime time. Oh,
Yeah.
my gosh. I just spooked something giant with my buzzbait. Something
Yes,
giant.
Simcoe. Yeah.
Oh my god. And then Eagle Lake for the muskies. I got to do Lake of the Woods a couple summers ago. That was epic. Where else do I want to go? And actually, like I think the St. Lawrence River towards Montreal for some of those big muskies out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's on the bucket list. And then some of that stuff in British Columbia.
Yeah.
Hanging out with them Haagen-Dazs boys. Like
Yeah,
that.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah. You know what? For me, it was Lake of the Woods. I've been dying to get up. There's a big tournament up there in the summertime. I always thought I'd do like a 2-week trip and enter that tournament and pre-fish that area for 2 weeks and then have a go at it. But you know, the fish don't grow as big up there as they do down here, but there's still some really big fish up there. You know, there's lots of fish in that 5-pound class, but you know, 3 to 4 pounders are generally, but you know, numbers are crazy up there, and it's just such a vast body of water. It would be pretty exciting to fish that. I'd be pretty pumped. So that'd be my choice. I think everything else that I've wanted to fish, I fished up here.
That's a beautiful, yeah, man. You guys got a lot of awesome water.
Yeah, we really do, man. Yeah. Hi. What's happened to the largemouth bass fishing in Rice Lake? Yeah. You know what, Louis? Great question. I honestly don't. Hold on here. Something going on. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. You know, I fished Rice Lake. I sort of grew up on Rice Lake when I was young. Fished a lot of, pretty much all I fished was Rice Lake when I was a kid. And, you know, when I got into the Great Lakes, I stopped fishing. Actually, between the year of, say, 2002 to almost 2016, I was never on that lake. So there's definitely something going on with the largemouth on that lake. You can't win tournaments on that lake anymore in largemouth. It's very rare. I think a couple of years ago, someone had a big bag one day, and, you know, generally there's some good mixed bags, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they're just getting overfished there and there's not a lot of catch and release going on there. I'm stumped too, man. It'd be neat for our biologist to tell us something, because you couldn't win a lake on, you couldn't win a tournament on that lake if you weren't fishing largemouth back in the days. Now it just seems like smallmouth has taken over and the largemouth have really suffered. I don't know why. Got another question here. Speaking of Lake Ontario's, yeah, the new catch and release, what baits you recommend for both smallmouth and largemouth? Well, I know Oliver can speak on this too. I'll quickly say, you know, when the water temps are cold, you got to really slow down. But, you know, a jerk bait is hard to beat in the pre-spawn, you know, just because it suspends in their face. You can leave it there for long periods of time. And, you know, again, that strike window small, their metabolism rate is very slow. So whatever you're doing, I mean, there's lots of baits that'll work, but I just find baits that you can stop are better than baits that are a continuous move. You know, there are situations within that pre-spawn, if you get a warming trend, they can come up and eat, but generally sitting in their face, you know, and just milking that is going to get you more bites. Oliver? He's driving right now, so we got to wait for him to stop. Yeah, so again, like for sure, you know, a jerk bait, you know, tube, drop shot, anything on the bottom that you can leave. The nice thing about the jerk bait is it allows you to cover some water. And, you know, when you're looking for fish, that's key, especially on the Great Lakes where it's such a vast body of water. You don't want to sit in one area too long and waste a lot of time. I remember the first time I ever fished Lake Ontario, and I came from Lake Simcoe, which I thought was a big lake, and went to Lake Ontario, and I was like, oh, I'm going to crush them out here. The first 2 days, I didn't catch a fish. I didn't actually even see a fish. I questioned whether I should maybe change sports and get into something else, because I'm like, you know, I suck. I can't get any fish. But, you know, what I realized is covering water is key, because there's so much areas on that lake that look good. They're not all good. You have to figure out what areas the fish are using, and covering some water is key. But when the water's cold, you got to find a balance in between that, slow it down. But you could still cover water faster with a jerk bait than you can with a drop shot or a tube. It allows you to find some fish. And then once you find some fish, you could settle in and try and break them down and fish some different baits. Your mic's not on.
Mine is now. Sorry. Save you guys the
Andy,
noise.
yours is off too.
Oh, and is off.
Yeah, Andy's is off. Who's in charge of this thing?
Yeah, it's a well-oiled machine here.
Canadians, man. It's wintertime. We drink a lot.
That's fair. I'm actually supposed to pick up a special guest here from the dock. We're actually filming a TV show for a Black Rifle Coffee series that I'm doing this year.
I noticed that. Tell us a little bit about the coffee thing. Or can you say anything right now?
Black Rifle Coffee is one of my new brand partners for this year, and we're shooting a brand new adventure series in between my opens event. So it's kind of more in line with what everybody's seen me do the last few years, right?
Yeah.
Chasing showcase for
You're breaking up a bit there, buddy.
my man's truck.
I'm here by myself right now. I don't know what you guys
Here I'm
want.
about to pull up next to them. This part that I had to do some time. We're on the shit. So I want to see this thing. Hold on. Show us what we got, boys. Oh! Done.
Wow.
Guys-
That's a
You
good
guys
one.
see that?
Yeah. Beauty.
Yeah, that's at least a 7 or 8 pounder. That's
He's we'll get it. Don't worry, he'll come back in again.
Yeah.
To make sure that. So, but Nick, I've noticed. I'm looking at the questions, and I know that you know electronics very well, and electronics play a big factor in your game, especially with Great Lakes. Like it's huge. So, can you just kind of touch base on that a bit, because there's so much things happening out there. Try and keep it as general as possible, but like I said, electronics is a big factor nowadays. So.
Yeah, electronics is a big subject, man, and especially nowadays with so many different things. Now you got forward sonar, you got down imaging, you got 2D, you got side imaging. It can be very confusing. In a lot of the on-water classes I do, I help young anglers break down. And you can keep it very simple. I mean, we always talked about, you think about electronics, most anglers probably use about 5% to 10% of actually what the sonar will do for you, what the unit will do. They can do so much more. But nowadays, you guys that are watching tournaments are seeing this forward. The Live Scope, Live Target, all these brands are coming out with their own. They kind of do the same thing. It just shoots a beam out in front of the boat and allows you to see live what's going on. So if a fish swims by, you can actually see this fish. Not only can you see the fish, but it tells you what depth it is and then where it is by how you're pointing at your trolling motor, and you're able to make a cast at that fish before you get on top of it and spook it. Generally you have a better chance to catch it. I just think that, to me, it's important to kind of use the technology, but at the end of the day, you still got to be an angler. You can't be stuck on just like I see guys just like on their trolling motor, and a good angler, yeah, that's going to work for them. But guys that are still learning, it's still important to understand how to work your bait. What bait you should use. All this stuff will aid you and help you find fish. Andy, you can talk about this too. Back in the days when we first started, GPS wasn't even around. So to find spots, you had to, especially spots that were out, you had to find points on shore. When that tree goes across that window and then this tower hits that tree, then you knew.
And the church. Don't forget the church. There was always a church in the picture. I don't know why.
Yeah. And God forbid if it was a foggy day and you couldn't see anything, you're done.
Yeah, not good.
Now
not good.
GPS always puts you on the spot and puts you within 5 feet of anything that you find. Side imaging is something that guys, I see a lot of younger guys or guys that are just getting into it. they don't use. They're afraid of the technology. Side imaging is huge. It revolutionized how we found areas, because now, rather than just looking at 2D, which at the time you had to sort of decipher and figure out what you were looking at, side imaging shows you the boulders. It shows you, wood on the bottom. It shows you a weed line. You're able to take your cursor and move over there and mark that spot. Now, not only did you find stuff, but it puts you right on that area, and you're able to find things so much easier. So
the kid's back. The kid's back.
Kid's back. Yeah, there he is.
Sorry, boys. Cut out.
All right. Yeah, you're good now.
Were you guys able to see that fish?
Yeah, that was insane.
Okay.
Yeah, beautiful fish.
Yeah, so we got the crew here. Got all the gear. They're gonna mic me up. Gonna do a little meet greet with someone you guys may have heard of in the bass fishing scene. You do that for the next couple of days. You'll see in a minute. So go on. Didn't mean to.
So anyways, Andy, you know what? Electronics, they help us, especially in deeper water. They help us find stuff that, a lot of times now our mapping systems are so much better too. That's another thing people don't understand. There was a lot of in-between stuff that we had to go find ourselves. Now mapping systems are they're so accurate. It's really hard to find stuff that the map doesn't have. I mean, I think of Simcoe as a perfect example. I had stuff there that nobody knew about. It was hard to find. Now I haven't been on Simcoe in a while. I start fishing tournaments on Simcoe again. I go back with my new mapping system. I'm like, oh, that hump is marked. And oh, that point is marked. And oh, that inside bend is marked. So, it's hard to find secrets still. Now it's about being a better angler. You got to be able to outfish the guys that are around you all the time. So use electronics. They're important, but you got to still got to learn how to fish stuff.
Nick Kuspis actually's got a question for you. We all know Nick. What determines the color of jerk baits you would choose available for foreign in the lake of water clarity?
Available floor. Yeah. So, I just did a video on my YouTube channel about this. When it comes to jerk baits, I don't really look a whole lot about matching the hatch. I'm more about what jerkbait is going to be seen easiest in the conditions that I'm confronted with. So we know with jerkbaits, generally it's clear to stain water, murky water. It's not like you're not going to catch fish, but there are better choices. That bait's moving around and it's hard for bass to track. I know that they find ways to feed, but I just find like it's a sight fishing bait. They see it, they come after it. So in the mornings, I'm looking for something that's kind of like maybe flat or matte or opaque. Cloudy days, the same thing. On sunny, calm days, I'm looking for translucent colors, something that the light penetrates. Yeah. And then, windy, cloudy conditions or sunny condition, sun cloud mix, but you got some wind. I really love that flashy stuff, not clouds. So sun cloud mix or sun, windy days. I love like that GG finish or that flash finish. Really, that light hitting off it brightens it up and you get those flashes going and it really triggers fish. So anytime you're thinking about colors, it's really about the style of bait. So you got translucent, you got flash, and you got opaque or matte. And then there are different patterns within those things. Just make sure you have a couple of each of those and it'll cover all your jerkbait fishing in any condition.
It's like a rock star is almost ready. Eh? He's on the sideline.
I mean, I got to do all that stuff myself. Are you kidding me?
Hey, I got another quick question for you, Nick. So, with the Great Lakes opening up, or Lake Ontario opening up, Erie's been open for a long time for preseason fishing. Where would you start? Are you going to start where you finished off, like the year, if you're a guy fishing Lake Ontario, or are you looking for different areas, like for bass, per se?
So Andy, everybody's a little bit different, but I'm always about learning. I'm constantly spreading my water out. I'm trying to grow and find new areas. I mean, it's super important, especially on the Great Lakes where wind plays a big factor. So if you have all your stuff on one side of that lake and the wind blows there, you're kind of, especially shallow, it's kind of done. So, I'm looking shallow, if it's super cold, maybe at the beginning, because it's open. So you can go out as early as you want. I think when that water temp starts to climb into the 40s, or you get a couple of maybe a warming trend, get up shallow. Otherwise, I'm still looking deep.
Okay, I'm still show these guys who we're messing with.
All right, let's get Oliver on here right now. I just want, he's obviously unmuted himself. So black. What's the coffee taste like? Number one, Oliver. Like, is it good coffee?
It's great coffee. It's in all the Bass Pros. So you guys got any Bass Pros north of the border?
We do, yeah.
Yeah, they gotta be in there. So I know you guys like that other stuff. I was never that impressed with that other stuff.
It felt like that's a question. Like, do you have snow in the middle of summer? I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Oh my God.
So,
Yeah,
all right,
but
tell us
it's
what's
good
going
coffee.
on, man. What's going on right now?
Yeah, we're shooting a first episode for an adventure series that we're doing with Black Rifle Coffee for their new free range American platform, and it's going to be chronicling some adventures in between my tournament events just to keep me sane.
Wake you up in the morning.
Nice.
Yeah. So it'll be a lot like what you guys have seen me doing the last 4 or 5 years, traveling the country, trying to catch the biggest thing I can.
Can we see a future, like what is it, like a scent from a coffee scent? Or have you ever done something like that, Nick? Have you ever actually scented a bait with something like just crazy, and just all of a sudden you catch a fish on it?
Back in the days when we were young, we played around with some crazy stuff, but
Well, I think we're going to be seeing an Oliver and I coffee dip.
Some Black Rifle, I don't know, chocolate, some kind of
mocha.
Guys, I don't even know if they even like me that much yet. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. But I don't know if you guys can read backwards.
Oh yeah, I know that guy.
Yeah, I know that guy. Yeah, we know that guy.
So we're going to see. It looks like he got stuck talking to someone here on the ramp.
Should I kind of come off the screen so I get a better picture? Victoria, pull me off.
We are live with Canada, the Toronto Fishing and Boating Show.
What's going on?
What's up? Nice to meet you.
Well, it's good to meet you.
You know Nick Cousins?
No,
I know who he is. I know
now. So yeah, we got to go out there and find more of those grass pandas, as they call them, or ditch pickles, or all kinds of weird names for these largemouth bass.
Florida freak nasty.
Yeah, Florida freak nasty. So, Nick, can you hold?
Say that again, buddy. You broke up.
Can you carry this the rest of the show?
Oh,
you got big shoulders,
man. Nice meeting you, man. Go out there and kill them.
All right, boys.
All
right.
Hey,
all right,
Oliver, we got to get
Canada,
up to the show next
guys. Things coming from the Big Bass Dreams team up there. So enjoy your first pre-spawn early season crack at big largemouth and smallmouth. And thank you guys for having me on.
Right. Thank you. Say hi to Paul Neck for me. That guy's pretty awesome, eh?
Yeah, he's good, man. Yeah, I hear a lot of good things about him.
You know what? We're hoping we'll see him in the future up here. So one way or the other. Great guy. They're actually a phenomenal person. So, all right, Nick. So, you're a book of knowledge. So I just want to kind of pick that brain for a bit because, and we have a lot of questions there too. So I just want to make sure that, but we were kind of touching base on that whole new season for us in Lake Ontario. And, like a lot of guys like late in the season, they're fishing specific areas. And coming into a new season, like there, and I'm not particularly, I don't fish a lot of that pre-season stuff in Erie. I think you have. So in Erie, are the guys fishing the same spots in the spring as they are in the fall? And is that the same type of pattern will probably work in Lake Ontario?
Well, Lake Erie, they definitely are. So a lot of the stuff that you'd fish at the beginning of the year when the ice is gone is kind of where those fish will revert to, right? You think about wintering holes, those fish slowly transition themselves to whatever wintering holes. And, Andy, the thing is about bass fishing is about anybody is that, listen, they're just all theories. Unless you're plugging them with something to follow them all year long to know 100% where they're going. But, we figure this is the first year that I really spent a lot of time in the fall because normally in the food and beverage industry, I'm working in the fall. So I rarely get any chance to get out in the fall. Mm-hmm. This was the first year that I was able to do it quite often on both Lake Ontario and Lake Simcoe. And what I realized is as the season progressed and I started getting into colder and colder temperatures until the season ended, those fish were slowly moving away from some areas and kind of filling into some other areas. So on Lake Erie, for sure, what the other thing, I'll tell you this quickly. Every single Great Lake, there are some subtle differences. You cannot fish them the same. Lake Erie smallmouth, they like deep water, and especially we only get to fish on the American side. Remember, so the shoreline is a lot different on the American side than it is on the Canadian side. But they really it's a deep water pattern for sure. Lake Ontario is very similar on the Canadian side as it is to the Canadian side of Lake Erie, where we're not allowed to fish. And I would assume, again, it's just an assumption. Anytime you get to a new lake or you're doing something different, you can assume something, and then you got to go out and try and prove it. And if it doesn't work, you're starting from point A again. But I think early, those fish are still going to be deep. If you start to get a warming trend, I think fish are going to come up shallow. Remember, that top part of the water is the first thing to warm up in the spring. It's the first thing to cool off in the fall. They're looking for warm water. That metabolism rate starts going. So when that water starts to warm up, those fish are going to start tracking shallow, right?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, dude. Like 100%. So it makes you wonder if we're ever going to maybe see an early season on like places like Simcoe and places like Georgian Bay in the future. Like I know I talked to Bruce Tuss, and they're really going to be strict on the whole catch and release thing. Like basically, you catch that fish and you're going to put it right back in the water. You're not they're not going to allow you to even take it. They don't want you taking pictures of them, to be honest with you. So that'll be interesting to see how they police that.
Yeah. Andy, it's the way it really should be. You know, we got to take care of our resource. It's a lake on like our Great Lakes, our lakes, all these big lakes around here, man. They're just loaded with giant fish, and you know, boxing fish and all that stuff. I mean, you know, I always tell anglers, it's great. It's good to take pictures. And again, it's just my opinion. It doesn't mean that, you know, I'm the police. I'm not in the bass fishing police out here, but you know, boxing fish to take pictures, man, take a picture and let it go. If you don't have to fizz that fish, don't fizz that fish. If you can catch it, take a quick picture and put it back in the water, it swims right back down. It's fine. I've watched them on a graph. On my graph, I've put them back in the water, and I see them just swim all the way down to the bottom, and they settle down there. They're fine. But the more you hold them out, then you got to fizz them. If you don't have to poke them, don't poke them. If you don't have to box them, don't box them. Tournaments are different. We understand we got to box them. We do it. But if you got a bunch of guys out there boxing fish over the course of time, it's gonna affect our fishery, no doubt. And there's some really big smallmouth out there, big largemouth too. Take care of the resource.
So I know you're really strong in the pro-ams, and the reason I know that you like bringing new people to the sport, stuff like that. So we've during the past 24 hours of the Bass Site, I've been watching the questions coming up, and some of the questions, especially when it comes to pro-ams, going as an amateur, as a pro, because you are a pro, what do you expect from the amateurs? Like, what are you expecting them to do and bring with them? And you know, like I think the question got asked to Bob 2 days ago, and he basically said that you know, most of the time the pros will give you stuff. So, but if I was your co-angler, what would you expect from me to bring?
You know what? Like, sometimes I'm actually, I got to tell you this. I'm actually too nice, because I you know, the whole thing about these pro-ams is that you really want to get these guys excited and get them into the sport. You know, I mean, it's important to grow the sport. It's a wonderful sport. I love it, man. I've been so passionate about it since I was a kid. And it literally, like, you know, that Skeeter thing, eat, sleep, fish. That's been my entire life. I mean, I tell people all the time when I was in school, you know, I was drawing pictures of bass jumping into the water in bass boats. Maybe I should have been studying a bit more, you know. But I love the sport so much. And I really, you know, anytime I get a young guy on the boat or somebody that's new to the sport, I want to teach them. I want them to be excited about it. So yeah, I tell them they don't have to bring their own rods. I give them my rods. I give them my baits. I try to help them. You know, I was in a situation in a pro-am where, you know, I had about maybe 17 pounds and we were tracking this one fish, and, you know, the kid didn't catch anything. So I said to him, I'm like, just pitch out there, you know, I sort of walked him through everything. He does it. He gets the fish, but, you know, he's new. He didn't know, and he set the hook super hard on light line, you know, and snapped the line, and that fish took off, you know. So I thought, man, you know, like, that's an easy fish. That takes my weight from 17 to maybe 20, because I had a 2 and change in the boat. This fish was over 5. And I'm like, yeah, that's going to hurt. That's going to hurt the pocketbook at the end of the day. But, you know, I love it, man. You know, there's another kids tournament I do. Educast is another kids tournament, getting kids involved.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I've been a pro there doing that tournament with them for 6 or 7 years. I love it, man. I love that look on a kid's face is priceless. You know, and it kept me off the street. It kept me, you know, sort of really focused on something, and it kept me out of trouble for most of the time. So, I mean, I still got into trouble. You know, kids are kids going to get into trouble, but I think angling really took me away, and it gave me purpose, you know, and I think even now, like I see guys that are retiring and they don't know what to do. They've worked all their life. They never really had any kind of, you know, hobbies or anything. And then they get bored. I can't, man, you give me money, I'm never going to be bored till the day I die. I'll fish every single day. I love it.
So what do you expect from them? Like, what are you expecting them to bring with them when they're coming on board? Like, you know, are you want them to bring anything? Like, just you supply everything?
You don't have to, but you know, like I always say, like I teach people on their boat because it's their equipment, and I want them to be able to use their equipment better. So if a non-boater wants to bring their rods, no problem. I'll help them with some, you know, how to tie lines and sort of teach them some things and see their equipment, and you know, just make sure everything's good. And you know, I tell them if they want to use mine, great. If you don't and you're comfortable and you want to be better than with yours, absolutely. But, you know, I try to, you know, sometimes they bring some baits that, you know, if they got confidence in, they're like, Nick, I really like this. Absolutely. Because, Andy, I learn things from guys who have only been on the water, you know, for a month. You can always, no matter how good you are, we can always learn. So if they have confidence in something, absolutely, man, bring it on.
Yeah, sometimes you get so caught up in your way that, you know, you kind of sometimes lose that whole path of you know, different opportunities.
Yeah, you can't be that way, right? This is, it's crazy, but fishing is such an ego sport. You know, we love it. We love getting up on stage and showing that huge bag of smallmouth or whatever we've caught. But at the end of the day, you know, every day you're on the water, you're learning, and you can learn from an experience. You can learn from someone else. It doesn't matter what level they're at, man. I've had some guys that say, hey, Nick, I catch them on this, and I watch and I'm like, who am I to say they're catching fish on that bait, man? It gives me something. I put it in the bank, right?
It's true. So, okay. So let me, first I just want to say to Attila, that's really cool of you that you do that, because like he actually put on our site that, you know, he helps kids when he's at parks and off ramps and stuff like that. And, you know, and it's good. Help boaters too, with the backing of the boat, especially new boaters and stuff. But we got a question for smallmouth bass tips for Georgian Bay. So, Nick, I don't know that you know this, but we've been working with the Georgian Bay MNR and trying to, you know, move the Canadian Open to Georgian Bay, at least for 3 years, because we just figure, you know, want to kind of keep them moving around, and then hopefully when we're done with the Georgian Bay Pro-Am, then maybe we can leave it there with another Cup Series event. So, and obviously you're loving the Cup Series event. So, all right. So, have you fished Georgian Bay? And if so, have you targeted smallmouth there?
Yeah, I've targeted both. I mean, I've done some guiding up there, some guys that have cottages up there and they want to learn the lake. So I've had to go up there and sort of, you know, scope the land a bit. So I know something. I don't put a lot of time there, but I try to put at least a day or two on the water every year on Georgian Bay. It's a fantastic fishery, man. It's got a great population of largemouth, great population of smallmouth. The one thing about there is that you really learn in any lake, we always say a bass is a bass is a bass. And there's some stock to that, but every lake, there's a little bit of a secret, something that a bass likes in this lake and they're not too fond about in another lake. So trying to learn that, like one thing I've learned about Georgian Bay, and you know, late in the fall, like you figure they go deep, and they probably do, but some of my biggest smallmouth and best days I've ever had, like water temps in the 40s, have been in like 2 feet or less. You won't catch a fish on Lake Erie in 2 feet or less when that water temp gets that cold. Those fish go deep. But on Georgian Bay, for whatever reason, so it could be a forage thing. Maybe if you get a warming trend, maybe I've been there when it's been warmer and those fish they just go shallow. And I've caught some really big smallmouth in like super cold water. We do this thing, you know, Oliver was talking about this, where guys are like, we have tournaments against each other just for fun, or even our own self on the boat. I got a buddy of mine, we call this thing the Championship of the World. It's just 2 of us on a boat. We do it in the fall every year. And we have this, we pretend that Marty Stone is on the boat with us, you know, MLF, and he's talking while we're fishing. And, you know, we went deep all day long on Georgian Bay. It was really cold. Water temps were 44. I'm like, man, they won't be shallow. Fished all day, caught 1 fish. And the last hour, like, let's just go shallow, man. We got to do something. And they were all over this shallow water. Like, who would have thought in that water temp, they were in 2 feet of water. And I don't mean like off the edge. They were right up on a flat. Don't ask me why, but that's why we love fishing. It's different all the time. As soon as you think you figured it out, you realize you haven't, and you're starting from scratch. But Georgian Bay is a fantastic fishery, man. I love it.
So in Georgian Bay, there's so many different angles to come at it if you're planning on fishing Georgian Bay. And we run our tournaments out of Penetang, and you know, at first we didn't realize that the closer you are to that gap, the tighter it is, and you can actually get a lot further. You're not getting into that rough water. Should it get rough, right? You know what I mean? So that's actually a really good factor. So okay, so let's just touch base on a couple other things too. Like what do you look for in a boat when you're buying a boat? We're looking at a boat, like is it like, and let's not talk 21 foot. Let's just talk about if you were a guy getting into like a 17, 18 foot boat, you know, with type of horsepower, like try and keep it in 115, 150 max, but 115 is probably ideal. Rod, what means a lot to you? So it's a rod length, live wells, bait well. Is a bait well important? Do you think it's important to some people? Like windshield, no windshield?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, you know what, Andy, like, you know, 115 is a great motor, but I'll tell you this, as much as you can, anytime you're purchasing a boat, I always tell the guys, max out your motor. It costs more money. So if your max is a 115 on that boat, some guys will go to a 90 or go to a 75. Listen, that's great, but then your resale value really hurts. So you think you're saving money, but in the end, you're not. Max out your boat, because the performance, that boat is meant, the performance of that boat maxes out at the max. So if you start dropping it and go to 70, you know, you're running that motor so much harder all the time to get it to perform properly. If I max it out at 115, I'm able to back off a bit. I'm actually saving more gas, right? Yep. And then my resale value at the end of the day is going to be better. I want that boat to perform, especially if I get out in the bigger water. You're dealing with waves and stuff like that. It keeps the nose out of the water, it keeps all that, and allows you to get back quicker when you have to. So max out your motor whenever you can. If that 18 footer says it should be a 115, don't try to save that $2,000 early. Just eat it. It'll help you, and it'll make it a better boat. You'll enjoy it more down the road. As far as, like, you know, I want a boat that's got storage. Storage to me is key regardless. So whatever that boat is, make sure it's maxed out in storage. Make sure that you can put rods in there. If you're a guy that flips and you have a lot of 7.5 foot rods, you don't want to get a boat that, you know, only maxes out at 6.5. What are you going to do with those rods? You got to keep them on the deck all the time. They get beat up. Make sure that rod storage matches the type of fishing that you do, right? The other thing I'm looking for, trolling motor, super, super key, man. Accessories. Look, you can have a 22 foot bass boat. That 16 footer will do the same thing in relative terms, right? So yeah, I can't get out in big water with a 16, but I'm still looking at, I want a trolling motor that's going to do all those things. Spot lock, super key. It's going to, you know, that it makes fishing so much easier. Back in the days when we had to try to use boat control with a, you know, you're always on that pedal, or, you know, whatever, you're drifting out, you're trying to hold, it's hard. Now you spot lock it, you could back off. The nice thing about spot lock too, that a lot of people don't think about, is when you're in some waves, you could spot lock, you can back off that front of the deck, go towards the back. And now that nose, the weight of the nose isn't going in. You're not stuffing as much waves and stuff like that. It allows you to fish in rougher water. It holds better. So trolling motor, max out. Same way I use it. Same way I max out my outboard, I'm maxing out my troller. The biggest trolling motor I can get for that boat, I'm going to use. I'm not going to back off and get something lighter, because your battery life is going to hurt. You have to use that trolling motor at a higher speed to get it to move. So that's important. Windshields, man, super important where you can have them. I like them, man. When I get into that rough stuff, or you have to get back, a storm's coming, that, you know, saving yourself from getting sprayed all the time or getting hit by waves, it's big. I always laugh when I'm, you know, my boat, it's just a single console. I have a dual. I take it out. So the guy that's sitting beside me, he's a disaster. I just laughed because I'm protected and he's not. But if you can get away with a dual console, you know, for the most part, especially if you're fishing with your buddy or your family fishing, I think dual console is important.
And in Canadians, for some reason, like from the boating world, like the dual consoles as an after sale is always a higher resale value too. So
it is. Yeah, yeah.
which is
Yeah,
which is a good thing.
Yeah, even when we buy the bass boats, we like them for singles because it opens up that one side fishing tournaments. You don't have to go around that if you're fighting a fish or whatever. It's actually better. But we always order the boats with that extra console. That was the first mistake I made with my first boat. Never again, because they always ask, do you have two consoles, right? A lot of guys are family fishermen or they're fishing with their buddies all the time, and they want that extra console. So it's important to have two.
So let's go to the bass rigs and the big boats and stuff like that. A lot of guys are getting heavy into electronics now, like big sonars, all that stuff. But we do realize that these motors need 1,000 amping cranks, right? So 1,000 amp cranks, right, in order to start, right? And a lot of guys will go and we get the calls and we have to go out to boost them during the turn, so we know that. Are guys now running two batteries, one for the electronics and one for the motor? Is that what I'm reading into this?
Yeah.
So and that battery's holding the charge all day. So like is that what it does? So it will hold the charge all day. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, you know what happens? So when you get into tournaments now, you're running your live well all day long. You know, you're running all this other stuff that you normally wouldn't do when you're just out there having fun. So, you know, these four, like a lot of guys are putting four. Like now, I was making fun of Jakobsen, that elite guy, because he had like 5 units, and I'm like, oh, you only ordered 5 this year? He goes, no, that's just for the front of the boat, right? So
oh my god.
Okay. Some guys are putting 6. They got 3 in the front, 3 on the side. I understand it. It's so that you can break your screens up and everything's bigger and you can see more detail. But that eats your battery, man. These processors are so much bigger now with forward scan and all this stuff. One battery won't last. It just won't. So I like to have 2. Or if you're going to go with one, go with the AGMs. They're more expensive. Some of them are $700. But they just have more. Yeah, they last much longer. So I know some guys that, like my boat right now, I only have 1, but I have an AGM 31 group, and right now I can run the trolling motor and not trolling motor, but I can run the live wells all day long, run both my graphs, and it's fine. The other thing some guys don't know when they're getting in it, put them to sleep. So if you're on the console right now, you're driving and you're running your front graphs. Put your bow graphs to sleep, and then vice versa. When you leave it's a little bit of a training thing, but every time I stop my motor, I put my 2 graphs to sleep, run to the front, turn them on. It's just one button and they're on again. That saves you a ton of power over the course of the day.
So we got a question here. Power poles charge for battery management.
Yeah. Yeah, it's brand new. It sounds like a great system, especially if it's not. So the nice thing about it has some of the things that some bass boats come with. They have that switch. So if your battery died, you can turn the switch and run, and just to start the motor off a trolling motor battery and then switch it back. But this system, it has that. So if your battery dies, it'll switch over. It'll also charge your batteries while your motor's running. It ain't going to help you if you're fishing one area all day long, because you can't charge them when the motor's not running. But if you're making long runs, that's great. So if I'm running to one spot, it's charging my battery. It's loading it up, and then I can fish. It'll draw it down. And then when I start up that motor to run 10, 15, 20 miles to another spot, I can turn it on and it's charging my batteries as I'm running. So it looks like a really cool system. Again, it's brand new. You know, it's like anything brand new, man. No matter how good the technology is, there's going to be some glitches, but I love where they're going with it.
We've had a lot of guys use them last year, and they're all pretty happy with it. Not going to lie to you. But like with all that being said, how do you feel about lithium batteries? Like, have you ever considered going lithium? Like when you're talking $700 for an AGM, are you really that far off of buying a lithium? And now you're saving on weight. I know that. And I don't. Are you sponsored by any battery company?
Man, look, if you know a lithium battery company that wants to give me a set, I'm all in. And let me know.
Well, Steve Nanad, like they're running the mega jigs at our show, and they were selling and they actually got a deal on this weekend. And you can go into their site. For the fishing show, they put together a deal that is, I think they got 25% off on the lithium batteries, which is a good deal. And you know that's huge, right? No, you got to look at that. But but the whole thing is also you're saving on weight, right?
Yeah.
And you're getting more charges out of them, right? We should almost have brought them in on this. So have you considered that, or is this something that's
Yeah. So
looking at?
one of my partners, Jasper from Pro J's Tackle, he
Yeah.
he put lithiums in his boat last year. We were out at St. Francis. It's the first time that we actually used those lithium batteries. Fished the entire day in current using a trolling motor, like crazy. So I asked him when we got offshore, I said, "Have you ever checked to see how much battery life you have?" And he's like, "No." He goes, "Remind me tomorrow," because he'd already plugged them in. So the next day he's got Bluetooth, so he turns it on. The battery was still at 97%
It's crazy.
after an 8-hour day in that's crazy. You'd be lucky with a regular or AGM or whatever. You'd be lucky if you had 30% left on your battery when you got offshore. 97.3% was all we used. So for what we do, the last thing you want is your battery to die, man. I've been in that situation. I actually been twice. I've had late penalties because I go to start my motor running around trying to get to spots and my battery's dead, and then I got to turn over and try and switch everything, and then I was late coming into the weigh-in. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to be stuck, even if you're pleasure fishing and you're fishing all day. You don't want to be stuck somewhere. So lithium is definitely something to look at. They've gotten better. The technology's gotten better. They've got some kinks out of them now that they've been around for a while. I'd be looking for a lithium sponsorship though, but if there's a sale, I might think about it.
So you know what? Honestly, take a look at Mega Jig.
Yeah.
He's got his lithium batteries on sale, including a charger system, and he's got a really good deal on right now, specifically for the fishing show. And I just want to throw a plug because Jasper, who owns Pro J's, he's got a big sale. You're going onto the site, just make sure you plug in Showtime, and you're going to get, I think, 15 to 20% off, depending on the stuff.
Off. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. And you can just go on the site. You can pick it up at the door, or he'll ship it to you one way or the other.
Yeah, right. And the other thing, sorry, Andy, real quick.
No problem.
Guys are looking for something there because they've been really working hard over the wintertime with this pandemic to get everything on their website, but they haven't been able to get everything on there. So if you don't see something, Jasper, man, those guys got everything you need. So if you don't see them, just give them a call and they'd be happy to set you up. Don't just go somewhere else. If you don't see something, I mean, at 15%, that's a good savings. That saves your taxes and a little bit more. Definitely check them out. They have a lot of stuff.
So, all right. So Attila actually comes up with one. It says, "Are there days when where you just want to go throw baits under the float?" Anyways, where did she put it? Kind of disappeared on me. But anyways, and it went down to like throw a marabou jig or Senko. And the thing is do you use marabou jigs? Obviously, a lot of guys are talking about them. They're very simple, very inexpensive. Big Jim was talking about the other day. He's got his own custom-made marabou jigs, which is pretty cool. Do you actually use marabou jigs?
Yeah, so I do early in the season when the water's cold again, pre-spawn when we go out to Sturgeon Bay in Wisconsin. I mean, no one can cross the border now, but when we did, that's a big thing. And actually, the marabou jig was a secret for a long time. Like it was actually the Canadians were bringing it down to that Sturgeon Bay and winning at the Sturgeon Bay Open against a bunch of local guys that were good sticks. It was a big secret. Now everybody kind of knows about it. It's definitely a big thing. What he's talking about is more of a float and fly. So you attach it and you can drift it, in current, or just move it along a flat and it'll sit up off the bottom. I've never really done that. It's very slow style fishing, and I'm too hyper. I'm very ADD. But in current situations and river situations, you can actually set up that float to run a seam, and it'll run that bait exactly where those fish are sitting. So in an eddy or whatever, it's like if you just took like a piece of bread and threw it in a river and watched it flow down the river, you'd see how it would follow. That would do the same thing, and it puts it right in. The thing about current is that fish position themselves where food comes to them rather than them going to them and fighting current. So it's something to try, no doubt. But I've never. But I do use light rods, make long casts with a marabou jig, and just slowly swim it back to the boat. It's dynamite. It catches lots of big fish.
Well, we do it for rainbow trout in the rivers.
Right.
You watch it float and you watch it come down. So I do got a question for that. We're going back to that for a second. How much weight would you be putting, like even forget about floating it, but just dropping a marabou jig down, because there's really no weight to a marabou jig. What do you?
Yeah.
How are you weighing it down, and how far up are you putting that weight, and or are you running it more like maybe a drop shot? Like,
Yeah, so so guys have already come out with like a marabou jig tied to a hook, and you can throw it as a drop shot. I played around with that a little bit. I can't speak about it much because I don't have enough information. It hasn't really been great for us, but I know guys are doing it and are getting fish on it. Confidence is a big thing, but marabou jigs generally are on really light jig heads. They could be on a 16th ounce, 8th ounce. I kind of like an 1/8 ounce overall. It's easier to cast. 16th ounce, man, you need light line and you need a longer rod, something really whippy that you can get out there, and you need the right conditions. Like you can't cast a 16th ounce into the wind, but on a calm day, that real light jig makes no splash. It looks very natural in the water. And that's the thing about marabou jigs. They move around so easily in the water. They look very lifelike, and that's why they catch fish. But 1/8 ounce is just a good overall. I'll go heavier if I'm fishing it in deeper water, but generally on shallow flats, 1/8 ounce will just cover about any situation. Yeah, there are certain days that the 16th is going to outfish the 8th, no question.
so okay, here we go. Michael Yoshida says, "What size weights are you using for drop shotting in different conditions and different depths?"
Yeah, so that's a loaded question, but generally,
It is.
yeah, I guess the best way to answer that for me is that I get away with the lightest weight I could possibly get away with. So if I'm in shallow water, inside say 8 feet, I'm going to throw maybe a 1/4 ounce, 3/16. And as I start getting into deeper water, you get into 15, 20, 25. Generally like a 3/8 to 5/8 is kind of what I play with. If you're in current, you got to go heavier. Remember, current's going to push that bait a lot more. So a heavier weight's going to shoot down. And then the shape of that weight too, right? Whether you go to like a cylinder, I like them around rock and stuff like that. Linear kind of bait. It doesn't get hung up on rock as much. And if I'm in more sand or weed and stuff, then I'll go to like a ball or a teardrop. I find that I get better feel with that, and it still pulls out of the weeds fairly easy. But I match my weight to the depth, and in some cases, how active the fish are. Sometimes they like a faster drop. Sometimes they like a slower drop. But if you just match them to the depth, you're fine. And a lot of that is feel, right?
There's a second part to this question where he asked, do you use straight fluoro or do you use braid and fluoro?
Man, I'm a big braid guy especially when it comes to my spinning stuff. Now, my fluoro leader in a lot of cases is super long. I've gone up to as long as a 25-foot leader.
Wow.
I'll go to like an Albright knot, which are really good. That FG knot is probably the best knot, but man, it's a pig of a knot to tie on. The nice thing about the FG knot is once it's tied, you could probably fish it for a day or two unless you damage it. It's pretty good. But that Albright knot to me just gives you, it's one of the easiest knots, and it's super thin. It's not as thin an FG knot, but it's enough. Most guys want that Albright knot to get to the reel and go no further. If I'm using a drop shot, because I'm not really casting it, a lot of times in deep water, I'm dropping it. It can go into the reel and it's fine. If I'm casting it, I don't want it to go past that reel, but still on a 7-foot rod, that still gives me a 10 to 12 foot leader is fine.
So why is such a long leader? Like when do you use such a long leader?
Because I'm in clear water and you're trying to make that bait look as natural as possible. Again, it's all theories, but it's a confidence thing for me. I don't want that braid too close to fish. Now, listen, on the flip side, conditions can play a big role too. If you're out there and it's cloudy and windy, I haven't tried it, but I don't think it's going to matter. If you had a 5-foot leader, you're probably okay. But I go to a longer leader too because I'm constantly retying my drop shot. You catch 1 or 2 fish, it's thinner line. You're going to have to retie. It starts getting caught in that crook of that hook. If you only had a 4-foot or a 5-foot leader or a 2-foot leader, you'd have to change that. Like you'd have to change your leader material every single time. So if I'm fishing a tournament, the nice thing about it is I have a 20-foot leader. I could keep backing. I can cut some line, retie, cut some line, retie. And by the end of the day, I still have enough lead that I'm okay and I don't have to worry about it, and I retie at the end of the day. So for me, it's just about, I don't want to be retying a new leader every single time.
So do you touch on what the strength of that leader is, like what, in that floor?
Yeah,
what
you
size
know,
are you using?
anywhere from say 6 to 10 pound test. I got some amateurs on my boat that use 12 pound, and they're catching just as many fish. But again, water clarity plays a role. If I'm on Rice Lake, for example, a little bit stained water, you could probably get away with 12 pound. If you're going into Lake Ontario and it's crystal clear, 8 pound, 6 pound, but 8 pounds just a good overall on any lake. You can get 8 to 10 pound test. You're good. Again, the lighter line is not just about visual. It gives you more action. So if I'm using really light weights, a 6 pound leader is going to give that bait a little bit more flow, a little bit more natural look, right? If that line's too stiff, it kind of eats away at the action, right?
Yeah. So just kind of boom, because it's not what you want. You want it to kind of like suspense, pretty much, is what you're looking at doing.
Andy,
right?
everything in bass fishing is in the details, man.
And it makes a difference at the end of the event. Like, when it's aggressive fishing, I think that everybody's got a chance at doing it. But it's times when it gets tough is when it makes the difference, and those little things matter and are huge, right? So. And
you said something perfectly. There are certain days, man, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. They're on fire. They're eating. They get stupid. Dave Mercer always says how stupid they are. They're really stupid when they're hungry, but when they're not, these little details really come into place. And, I've seen it. You will outfish somebody paying attention to those details on those days that's tough. And then other days when they're aggressive, you can play around and throw a jerkbait today and just go crazy on it. Doesn't matter the color, they'll eat everything. And then on other days, man, if you're not throwing that color and you're not using a specific cadence, you get outfished and you'll struggle.
So just all of a sudden, a whole whack of questions came in, and we kind of got to go to the next segment. I'm really sorry, Nick. But you know what I want to do, Nick, and all the guys that are posting right now, just so you understand that everything is posted, and you can go back and watch it on our site. You can watch it on our Facebook or even YouTube. It's posted over and over again. But what we have been doing, and I'm going to invite you as well, and also Oliver. But what we'd like to do, we're going to try and bring you back individually at some point over the next month or so, especially on the CSFL site. I think it's important that we start addressing a lot of stuff, especially with the new season and how it's going, how it's getting, how it's going to be upon us very shortly. And we actually, I think, have one with Bruce Tusk coming up, hopefully. So that should be good for all the guys. Nice. But I can say thank you so much. I can't.
You're welcome. Man.
Thank you. It was kind of cool to have Paul come up like that with Oliver. We weren't expecting that.
I know.
So were you expecting that?
No. Right? Well, I mean, I knew they were doing something together, so I figured it might happen. But I got tongue tied there, man. I mean, I love Paul Nick. He's just a young guy that's really in that social media scene. He does such a great job. He's a lot of fun to watch.
He does. Yeah. He's a happy-go-lucky guy. Like, I don't think I've ever heard anything negative about the guy, right? So it's like, he's just a good person, and you know what? I really hope Oliver has a good run at this, because his whole past few years of career has been about big fish, and he's just naturally down there, catches a fish while talking to us on the station here. So Nick, I can't wait for us. One thing I do want to touch on real quick before I do let you go, because I kind of heard something. I wasn't sure if I heard it right. I know you guide out of your own boat, but you said that you'll go and guide on somebody else's boat. And I think that's huge, because I think sometimes I want to know what my boat's capable of doing opposed to what your boat's doing, even though it'd be nice just to go out with you for a day. But I would love to, like, sometimes, how do I work within the means that I have to go out every day? And you're doing that, right? What do you normally charge for something like that?
Yeah, it kind of depends, but my rate right now is $800 when I'm teaching. Now I have packages where if they want to buy, because it's hard, man. You can't teach somebody in one day everything, But I have some packages that start with electronics and then get into setup and lures and when to throw what and what to look for. 5 days, and I'll drop my rate down to $650. I'll give them a deal on that per day. But I mean, it's everything. It's setting up electronics. It's how to launch your boat. It's the things that you need. It's lures, it's line, it's rods, it's everything. So that's kind of, I like doing that. My guiding is more trophy guiding. I don't really do the normal, just go out and catch fish. It's trophy. You want to catch a big smallmouth in the fall or whatever. I do a lot of that, but a lot of that is lessons. I go onto your boat. I teach you how to use your stuff so that when I'm not there, you learn. And then I'm on the phone. I'm texting all the time. Yeah, try this, try that. I'm very involved in the angler. I want them to be better. You know, it's important. Growing the sport is a big part of this.
Well, dude, I think that's amazing. And, you know, to some people might have said, oh my God, 800. But, you know, when you think about, it's usually not something you're doing, you know, you're traveling 20 minutes to a job. You're going to a lake. You're spending a whole day in the water. You know, some of that stuff it's taken us years to kind of get to that point. And I still don't have a full understanding of electronics and a lot of other stuff. So the thing is when you have an opportunity to get out with it, and I could tell you right now, just go into the CSSL standings, and he speaks for himself just by all his positions and how the things he's achieved. So good for you, buddy.
Yeah,
but again, I want to thank you very much, and I got to get ready for Mr. Jason Barnutz is coming on Fish Care, which I know you care about. So thank you. Buddy.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate having me.
All right, thank you.
All right, bye.
At Mercury, we're driving marine innovation forward with intelligent, intuitive solutions that improve the boating experience. All of our investments in engineering and in manufacturing over the last 15 years have given us incredible capabilities to deliver advanced technology to the industry. We completely reimagined outboard performance to design an engine that delivers boaters the freedom, luxury, and power to pursue their passions on the water. I'm proud to represent the more than 7,000 Mercury employees across the globe in introducing the most advanced outboard ever designed, the new Mercury 7.6-liter V12 600 horsepower Verado. The future of outboard performance begins today. We're really proud of this engine. It captures what's possible when you apply consumer feedback to design marine propulsion as a complete ecosystem that incorporates digital controls, intelligent fuel systems, hydrodynamics, propeller design, and all the other concepts that Mercury has mastered. The V12 Verado delivers a new level of capability and luxury for Mercury and provides boat builders options they never thought possible. And finally, as you should expect from the leading innovator in marine propulsion, this launch marks the latest, but certainly not the last leap forward in Mercury's journey to redefine performance and reliability for boaters.
Freedom to seek new horizons. Luxury beyond expectations. Power to reach new waters. The Mercury 7.6-liter V12 600 horsepower Verado outboard. Powerfully crafted, gracefully refined.